My name is Marcel Müller. I'm a computer scientist with a lot of experience in AI. I have a PhD on business process management. I've worked in half of the German big industry and in academia in half of the world, here in Europe, but also in the United States. And my day-to-day work is basically nothing else than building enterprise-grade generative AI projects end to end. So I'm working with the Center for Deep Tech Innovations, co-hosting this webinar today, and I'm the CEO of a company called Engine. That's a platform for enterprise generative AI applications. That you can where you have a platform that you can use to build these type of applications at scale. And I'm involved there with my team of right now 12 people, end to end for many projects right now, from mid-sized companies to big enterprises to small startups. So everything that you're going to be learning today or hearing today is not only academic and theoretic knowledge, but it's going to be knowledge that I draw also from my day-to-day work in environments probably very similar to yours. What we're going over today is, first, we will talk a little bit about ChatGPT and what ChatGPT or where ChatGPT's place is in enterprise, if there's any. We're going to talk about processes and how AI can make processes better. In the second talk, we're going to talk about organizations and how you do these type of innovation projects. And before we look into archetypes of use cases and do a little bit of hands-on building of a specific use case in invoice management today. Yeah? Not the most exciting things that will get us to AGI, but things that in enterprises have a large impact. I have a second screen, so if you see me now and then looking on another window, it's because I'm monitoring a little bit the group chat. With me are my colleagues Emilia and Faik. Faik will also have a look on the group chat, and if you have any type of question, feel free to write it there. I will always take a little bit of a break after a segment, go through the chat, and try to answer your questions of any kind that you may or may not have. Depending on how it goes. So you are all in this webinar today probably because you are somewhat of an innovator, or at least interested in innovation, and because something has sparked your interest specifically in AI. And when we think about almost now 2 years ago, when ChatGPT first entered the enterprise landscape, or the general consumer grade interfaces that you see here in this interface, was probably for a lot of people like you a trigger to look in this type of applications that you can build with generative AI. So in late 2022, ChatGPT as a product was released, but ChatGPT is actually not the core product. The core product of OpenAI is the large language model, the LLM, that was in that case called GPT 3.5. So it's a specific version of this large language model that was there in mid 2022. Large language models actually have been around for quite some time, but they were not really mainstream because they were not so accessible to people. So large language models were complex models that were usually hidden behind some sort of an API, or that you had to download and spin in infrastructure that you could do something with it. And a command line interface is usually not the thing that gets people excited. But when you have a chat interface that is as easy that anyone who ever used Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or any type of chat-related interface can use, this gets quite a lot of traction. Because for me, what was magic back then, but for a lot of the people is magic, is that never mind what you write in ChatGPT, you always get something out. I say that very consciously, something. Not talking about quality, not talking about if this is helping it in our company, but it sparked this feeling of there's a lot of potential in this type of technology, and it allowed us to quote unquote dream of what businesses could be. So using it for small tasks, writing summaries, formulating things from A to B, etc., where obvious use cases that you could get very quickly in this chat interface done, end to end, and try out and make in the end your life easier with what you have. So, but then there is the enterprise view on that. Of course, productivity and productivity gains, especially, is always something that makes anyone who is closely remote to operations kind of lick their fingers, because this is the point where you can always go. You either can increase your existing business or make your existing business more more efficient. So there were a bunch of consulting companies and research companies. In this case, this graph here is coming from Goldman Sachs, that were in that very beginning of last year, looking into AI potential across certain industries. And this graph here is quite cool, because it shows you on the x-axis different industries. You probably can find your own industry somewhere here. And then on the y-axis, it tells you to what degree or to what percentage of all of the tasks, of all of the processes that you have in this enterprise, you will see 0 to no automation. So in here in the building, grounds, cleaning, and maintenance sector, you will see that 90% of all of the processes that you have will not see any automation with generative AI. Because this is something that is very physical, something that's very manual. Generative AI will not clean your floor. Sorry to bring that to you, but that's not likely to happen. Other types of AI with cleaning robots, and so they will do. So today I installed the automatic vacuum cleaner of my mom. Was very, very interesting, and how they are mapping it, but that's not generative AI. We're talking here about generative AI. Then you see a lot of, let's say, industries where we see a good potential for using AI as a complement to a worker working on certain tasks. AI complement mostly means that in this use case, AI needs a little bit of supervision to make sure that quality is on point, and you as a human being using it more as a tool for working with the things that you already do. So a lot of in the processes in my area, so computer science, mathematics, educational services, but also especially these things with business and financial operations, sales, and everything that is related to sales, see a lot of potential for using AI as a complement to workers in there. And then there is a few segments where there is a lot of potential for AI replacement for at least a part of the processes that are in an organization like that. And we have here tasks in office and administrative support and legal. By the way, if you happen to be in legal, we have a huge legal AI project where I'm making legal operations, research, writing of different written products more efficient. Feel free to shoot me a message, and I can get you hooked up there. There's a whole bunch of people currently working on that. But this is things where we see that AI will replace tasks end to end, but even in these areas, only to a third. So that's a little bit of the AI impact that we have seen in the first step. But then when we talk about enterprises, companies, and larger scale organizations of any type, we see that there are 3 main challenges that are specific to enterprise generative AI. One of them being compliance and privacy, the second one being scaling and reproducibility, and the last data and systems integration. So if you use the free-to-use OpenAI ChatGPT version, so you're not putting your credit card there, but you can use GPT 4.0, I would strongly recommend not to use the free version for stuff that you are doing in your company. Of course, in the terms of services that you do, that you have, even though it's a free account, there's terms of services that say that anything that you will put in while being registered as a free user at OpenAI, they will use basically to train their models and make it better. Yeah, that's a typical situation that we have been having for a long time. And I call this always the situation of, if you are not paying for it, you are not the customer, but you are the product. And of course, this is what we don't want to have with our sensitive company data. Imagine if your internals about how your operational processes work lie with OpenAI, and then any competitor will basically just ask and get it out. There are enterprise APIs for that, where you don't have these problems, or on-premise models that you can do. So there's Llama 2, there's also Llama 3 and 3.1 right now, or OpenAI in Azure 10. But it's important to distinguish this difference between the consumer-grade interfaces, where you probably don't have these compliance guarantees, and the enterprise requirements that you have. The second being skilling and reproducibility. Skilling and reproducibility is, in my opinion, one of the biggest challenges that come from the fact that we always connect the large language model to a chat interface, which you do not necessarily need to do. Because think about it in the following way. You have 100 customer service professionals, and you have some sort of custom GPT with the company knowledge ingested in this GPT. In the end, each of these 100 customer service representatives will prompt a little bit differently, ask questions in a different way. So you will have very much varying results in different tones and styles, and sometimes also in terms of the output and the content that you get out. And what you would like to do in terms of making business processes more efficient. I'm a big fan of the whole, if you're into Six Sigma and all of that, this is my type of thing. We are always about reducing process variation and reducing defects in processes, and having just 100 people just prompting and doing something different is just by default bringing variation in that we don't want to have. So a chat interface is in actually most of the internal enterprise use cases, not really the interface that we want to have. We would rather have something that is focused more on templates and reproducibility. And that knowledge that comes to my third point of your company. Of course, a large language model that you have as a pre-trained model does by default not have any of your own internal company knowledge, not any of your internal company secret sauce that you would like to work with. So of course, there are ways with retrieval augmented generation, with fine-tuning, with others, where you can ingest your company knowledge in a workflow with an LLM and get access to it. But that has quite some overhead, including hooking up to existing IT infrastructure in an organization, all of your governance, authentication, authorization, role management, group management, privacy, everything that belongs behind that. And managing that is a challenge on its own. It's not as simple as say, okay, I have now my private ChatGPT and it knows now everything. When you are in a larger scale enterprise, this is going to be a problem. I'm going to talk now about processes, and we are going to look a little bit deeper into what these processes do. But I have Ian's, I see here Ian's comment in the chat. Ian finds the graph interesting, but is not sure if it considers knock-on effects. For example, if you need less software engineers, you need less managers, finances, and AR. Yes, it focuses very much. This is a graph that focuses on functions, on that, and it's not focus on telling you where you can lay off people. I have always people that tell me, "Oh, now if I'm in one of those areas, am I going to be replaced with AI?" In most cases, not, but just the things that you are going to do in your day-to-day life will look a little bit different, because the time that you save in doing things that are done by AI, sorry, is now freed up, and you can do other things in this time. So of course, there are certain knock-on effects and certain cross effects that you have between these different functions, but this is absolutely not considered in this graph. Completely not. But while we're already talking about processes, we have to get away from we are talking about chatbots, and we are talking about processes, because everything that we do in our business is a process. Making our businesses more efficient means making our processes better. So if we start with the process and then look into tech, we are getting much more targeted solutions than when we are just trying to put a chat interface on everything and hoping for the best. Yeah, if you start with tech the other way around, it's problematic. So, and I have here, this is usually the way on how I work also with my customers, is this wonderful bureaucratic nightmare that I have here modeled in BPMN of a CFO who needs to do controlling. The CFO gets every month, so this is a mid-scale German company, gets every month 1,000 invoices. And these 1,000 invoices, the CFO needs to map to a certain category and to a certain department, and then write an email to the department head to ask for justification if that invoice is supposed to be paid or not. The department head then has to go over this document, decide to pay, write an answer to the CFO, and the CFO then checks it with the invoice and makes in the end the decision whether to pay the invoice or not. This is what I call an enterprise back office task. And if you ask me, there is so many use cases in enterprise back office automation that are not customer service chatbots, where all of the people are running towards at the moment, where you can gain so much efficiency that is just on a complete different level than customer support chatbots. But that's just my report from my experience that I'm having. Now let's think we have this process, and I would like to show you how within an organization you go from such a process to a POC with enterprise generative AI. And first of that, you have to define the issue, describe the business pain of not only this issue in your organization, but more than this problem in the organization. So the problem that you have here is that this process is very bureaucratic and it takes a long time. This is the first step of a 4-stage process where you in the first step select an issue out of all of the issues that you have in your organization that you are prototyping in the second step, productizing, and bringing in production later on. And in the select step, before you actually go through one of these things, you say what processes have what type of priority. And I encourage everyone to prioritize that with not only qualitative data, but also with quantitative data. Of course, you have to qualify what is your pain point, but you also have to give a number to it. For example, mapping the category to an invoice. So is this IT cost, or is this service cost? Is this software cost, or is this external service provider cost? Is usually something that has many different repetitions. So that's the pain, and needs to be done case by case. So per case, so per invoice, with an internal hourly rate of $50 an hour and 1,000 cases a month, this means that the pain point for doing this process in that area is about $4,000 a month. Then we have writing the email to the department head. This process is time consuming, but on the other hand, it only happens in 10% of the cases. Because for 90%, this is already a standing invoice with a standing order, and we don't really have to consider it. So it only happens in 10% of the cases. So that means if we have 100 cases, 1,000 cases overall, this only happens in 100 cases, but it takes 15 minutes per case. And then we have a price of that pain point of $1,200 per month. Writing an answer to the CFO takes a lot of time, a lot of research, because if the CFO asks you, you need to get your stuff straight. And so the person who has to do this type of process usually takes per case 30 minutes for these 100 cases. So we have here a pain point of about €2,500 a month. And what you have in the first step really to do is to find out which of these problems are so big that they are worth building a proof of concept and making them better. Because if you have a process that you do once every year and then it takes you 5 minutes, there's no point why you should make an automation for that. Or depending on how important it is for you, you have to just see how long it will take to amortize the investment that you have to do upfront to automate it. And when you made this selection, then is the time come when you actually go to that prototyping step. And that prototyping step, you have to model this process like we have already done, luckily before. Right? This was our process model. Translate it into not only a single prompt, but several prompts. Try it out in an isolated environment, and then define if on the quality level, this is viable or not, and if you should further pursue it on it. Sometimes things just don't work out, and that's also part of the innovation process. Not everything can be a win, but being critical on it, looking into it, that's the process that we have to go through. So, and in our running example here, we say we would like to build a rapid prototype to validate the viability. We are taking these steps out of the process, so mapping the category and department, writing an email to the department head. That's what we're going to focus today, and the second one later on. We translate that into a set of prompts with specific prompt engineering techniques. We have a great amount of webinars on prompt engineering that we can send to you. That was already recorded over the course of the last year. So if you want to get some more material for prompt engineering, feel free to shoot us a message. And in the end, we are building here this type of a prototype for something very small. When we are thinking about, or when we are prototyping, we have to think about inputs of a process, outputs of a process, and what we are actually doing in this process. Inputs, meaning we have context information that we need for a large language model to do. In this case, we have case-specific context and we have static context. So the case-specific context is the exact information that we need for every case. So that would be the invoice, because in every case, in every new instance of that process, the invoice is going to be different. So this is case-specific data. On the other hand, we have static or semi-static context data, which do not vary too much from case to case. For example, the mapping to a specific cost center with a list is independent of any case, but the mapping that you do is dependent. When we create an output, we have to talk about, we have to focus on the form and the representation and the type of output. Do we want to have a formally written email? Do we want to have bullet points for further things? Do we want to have the document on which we can work, etc., etc.? And then we, of course, we have to think about the task that we're doing. And this is what we are going to do now in a little bit of a live session, because the product that me and my company are building is End Engine, where you basically have a zero gap between prototype, productize, and operate and launch, where you can build enterprise-grade applications actually without any type of coding that you have to do. And with that example that we had today here, I'm just going to show you a little bit how this is going to look like. If, by the way, if you want to try out this tool, let me know. We can make you an account, a trial account, and give you a bunch of credits. So don't worry about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new application for doing my invoice checking. And we can, on this platform, we can create 4 different types of applications: process automation application, a company guru application, which is more of a knowledge search, a chat application that you all know, and editor applications that's more of an Microsoft Copilot in Word on steroids, so that actually helps you reproduce work. We have a whole webinar on the 4 different types of applications in generative AI that are covering 90% of all enterprise use cases right now, according to our experience. The next one is in the beginning of September again. So if you have any type of questions related to that, if you would like to attend that, it's also going to be free. We are diving more deeper into these type of application types. So I'm creating now a new application. And this application is called Invoice Check, or I call it CFO Invoice Check, because it's going to have my CFO. I have to associate this this application to a certain organization, and I'm putting it here to the tech center, and I could also share this application now with you or with anybody. And when you come on this application screen and we created this application, it's now time to actually define our processes. And we do that by clicking here on logic. And what we're going to see now is that we can create a new process. And this is invoice mapping. And this process says maps an invoice to a cost center and writes an email to the responsible persons. And that's going to be a process template. So, and now we see, let me actually make that big, that you see it a little bit better. Now you see that we have here a blank canvas on which we can define our business process. Remember this slide? Input, output, task. Let's start with the inputs. We would like to input a invoice. So this is a variable that changes from each case to each case. And this input is not a piece of text, but it's a file. And in our case, it's a file of the type PDF. Then we have a department mapping. I call this mapping. And this is also a file of type PDF. Generally, we could also put other things in here like text. We could also put OCR documents in here. So if you have a scanned image version where you need to still extract the text before you can do something, we can also have this here. And those are variables that we can now use in our application. So, and to start with this thing, we are going to create an application where we have here a text completion model, and I am going to use GPT-4o. So there's a bunch of different models that are hooked up to this platform that makes it so easy to try out and evaluate different models against each other. I have here a prompt, and I have a task. And all that a task does is basically taking a model and a prompt and is executing that model on that prompt. So now my prompt, I say I have the following invoice. And now I put in my invoice variable that when we execute this process, we are going to fill in. Map this invoice to a project and tell me who is the responsible person for that invoice. Here is a list of my current projects and cost centers. And then I ingest the mapping. So, and what we are now going to do is we are going to save this very small process. We're making it more complex in a second, but I'm going to save this process. And what has been done now on the platform is we automatically created an end user application where the end user doesn't have to worry about any prompting, so scaling and reproducibility, you remember from the beginning, but only fill in these two gaps, the invoice and the mapping that we have. And I have here an example. I have here an example invoice of from AWS that I'm going to show you in a second. And I have here an example mapping that you're going to see in a second that we are going to use. So this is my invoice, and this is my mapping with my projects and my departments. And I am going to say now I'm executing this process here. Just that you see what I've just fed in. So there's an example invoice that I also just mocked from Amazon Web Service to a company called Mobility Makers GmbH in Stuttgart in Germany. And it's about compute instances, Amazon S3, Lambda functions, Route 52, with a tag called Project Microserver in here. There's unit prices, and there's about 700 euros, including VAT that is supposed to be paid. And the mapping to the departments and to the projects, you see here that there's a project name, that there's a project department, there's a project lead, and there is a contact email for these people. And we have here several pages of those. And when we go back to our application, we actually saw that this application here has been executed, and we get the answer based on the details in the invoice and the list of your projects. It pertains the term microserver, and let me map that to the relevant details. Project microserver, IT department, project lead is Max Meyer, and the contact email is maxmeyer@mobilitymakers.com. And we should send him an email. So that's the first step of this process. And what we are actually doing now is we are going to not only let him tell us who to send this email to, but also create the email for us. And therefore, we are making a second step with another text completion task and another prompt. And what I'm going to do now here is I'm going to basically chain the output of the first prompt to the input of the second one. So I say, I am the CFO of a large mobility company, and I need to do invoice mapping to cost centers and projects. I already analyzed an invoice and found the responsible person for it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chain the output of the first part to the input of the second task that I have. And then I'm creating another prompt where I'm saying, write a professional but friendly sounding email to the identified colleague asking for the justification of the costs of the following invoice. Then I refer to the invoice again. And they say, ask in the end if everything is all right. All right. So, and I'm going to put that as the last part of this task over here. So now we have a process that is a little bit more complex. And this here can get really, really complex. Like I have clients where we have like 40 steps that you do in this process. But this here is enough to show you the very beginning. You can also use this debug interface that you see here now to look into the intermediate results. And here's my invoice that we had again, and here is my mapping to project departments. And what I'm doing now is we're using this modeling interface, and we will see now here is the, let's say here's the intermediate result, where it says the invoice for various AWS services are related to microserver. Max Meyer is the lead. And now we are taking this and we are creating in the second step the email. Yeah, this is the description of charges. Could you please look into the justifications and tell me if I should pay them? Yeah. And when we are going with this approach, we actually build process templates and not only just prompts, but we really build end-to-end process templates and applications that we can scale and that we can also give to others in our department. There's many more applications for that. So we have external data sources that we can ingest here. You can ingest this type of system via API into or integrate it into any type of other things. And you can build really processes that are as complex as you want. And that's really the difference between having someone sitting there and doing something with ChatGPT and using large language models for real operational efficiency gain. And the nice thing from that part, once you're over this prototyping phase, with the tool that I've shown you, you can go directly in the productization phase and basically generate one of these 4 interfaces. What you have seen now in terms of the end user interface was the process interface, but we also have different other ones that you can do. And then once you have that, this process implemented, you have to launch it and collect feedback from real users. The chances that you build an application that helps you 100% right from the beginning are fairly low. So you need to have some sort of an agile way of getting feedback from your customers or from your users, for your internal users, from stakeholders, that you can make your application better in terms of quality, but also in terms of time. And in the end, you have an improvement of your process. And this is where this whole application actually goes into a product management approach, where you can go over again and again and manage it. And this is basically my short approach on how I would recommend anyone who's really into operational efficiency to, let's say, pull themselves apart from the whole crowd of people that think we are going to do something with ChatGPT and it's going to solve everything. There is situations where you need a chat interface, where you need quite some creativity, where you need flexibility, where you have non-reproducible processes. But if you have processes where you have 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 10,000 cases of the same process every month, then you really need to think about this process and how you are going to build that end to end. And speaking of building, this is my day-to-day business. What we're doing here with an engine of our platform, we build these 4 types of applications with custom company data. We work with larger enterprises where we are giving this tool to build applications internally. If you want fully enterprise grade, fully compliant to ISO 27700, SOC 2 Type 2, and others, we have a bunch of different models, not only for text, what I've shown you today, but also for images, for voice. We can deploy it on premise or in the cloud, fine-tuning, retrieval augmented generation, and all of the tools that you need to have it in your corporate organization in terms of governance and without an issue. And I hope that you have learned a little bit today, that I could help you with my processes and with our approach. And if you would have more questions, I will open now the round and look into my chat again. And if you would like to book a meeting with me, here's a QR code of my Calendly link, or shoot us an email. I get a question from JMC Kellogg. How does that differ to Microsoft 365 Power Automate, the platform that we have? Well, very easy. You are not restricted to the Microsoft environments. There is no need that you need to have the whole stack. You can integrate it to any type of system. Second of it, Microsoft Power Automate only happens behind the scenes. We have also let's say, end-to-end user interfaces that are automatically created. And we have much more features that are related to quality. So there's a whole testbed functionality where you can try out at scale how good your applications are. Microsoft Power Automate was built in the beginning not completely focused on large language models, because it has been there actually before there was large language models. We are focusing completely on all of these aspects of a retrieval augmented generation that are purely there in the large language model workflows. And these things are usually very cumbersome and hard to automate with Power Automate. Not even talking about the walled garden that you're putting yourself into. And if there are no other questions at this point in time, I thank you all for your attendance.